You cannot find me for this, you hear me? This is exactly why we called the police, Sheila. You are out of control.
All right, folks, let's everybody just take a breath.
It all started on a quiet Saturday morning when the flashing red and blue lights reflected off my new white mailbox. I was sitting on my porch, sipping coffee, when the patrol car rolled up in front of my house. Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, was already standing there waving her arms like she had just uncovered a major crime. "Officer," she yelled, "that's an illegal mailbox. It doesn't meet the community standards." The officer, a tall man with mirrored sunglasses, turned to look at her. "Ma'am, it's a mailbox." Karen pointed at it dramatically. "It's too tall. The post is painted the wrong shade of white, and the numbers aren't regulation font." The officer blinked. Then he turned to me and said, "Sir, is this your property?" I nodded slowly, half expecting a prank. "It is." Karen folded her arms. "He's violating Section 14, subsection C of the HOA code. The mailbox must be standardized." The officer raised an eyebrow. "And you called the police for that?" Karen gasped. "Of course. Someone has to enforce the rules." That's when the officer walked up, crouched beside my mailbox, and noticed something strange, something Karen didn't expect. He stood up, looked directly at her, and said, "Ma'am, this post here, it's perfectly compliant. But yours," he pointed toward her mailbox across the street, "is actually breaking several county codes." Her face froze. That's when everything changed. Before she could open her mouth, the officer started taking notes. The crowd of curious neighbors gathering nearby went quiet, watching the self-proclaimed enforcer get called out by the very person she called for help. And that was just the beginning. To be continued. Chapter 1. The Mailbox. War begins. The week before that scene unfolded, I had just moved into the neighborhood. I was a quiet guy, kept to myself, loved fixing things, and didn't really care for drama. I bought an old property that needed some serious love. The fence was leaning, the grass had turned yellow, and the mailbox, rusted, dented, and covered in cobwebs. So, naturally, I replaced it. It took me 2 days to build. I chose a sturdy post, painted it clean white, and added shiny black numbers. It wasn't fancy, just simple and neat. I didn't think a mailbox could cause trouble. But then again, I hadn't met Karen yet. Karen lived 3 houses down. Her yard looked like a magazine photo, but her attitude? That was another story. Everyone warned me about her. "She's the HOA president," my next-door neighbor whispered. "Don't cross her, she lives for rules." I didn't take it seriously until the day she marched up my driveway. "Excuse me," she began, hands on hips. "That mailbox isn't approved." I turned from my car and blinked. "I'm sorry?" She pointed at it like she was accusing me of theft. "The HOA has standards. Every mailbox must be the same color, the same height, and the same style. Yours is not compliant." I looked at it again. "Karen, it's a white mailbox." "Off-white," she snapped. "And the font on your house number is modern. We use serif." I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. "Okay, I'll look into it." But she didn't stop there. She sent 2 emails that night, CCing the entire HOA board, the property manager, and even me. She attached pictures of my mailbox with red circles around the violations. It was ridiculous. The next morning, I got another email, this time demanding I remove it within 3 days or face a fine. That's when I decided enough was enough. Instead of replying, I pulled up the HOA bylaws, printed them out, and highlighted every section about property modifications. Nowhere did it say mailboxes needed to be identical. They only needed to be neat, well-maintained, and structurally sound. Mine checked every box. So, I ignored her warnings. 3 days later, she came storming over again. "I gave you a deadline," she said, tapping her watch. "You're breaking the rules." "Karen," I said calmly, "I've read the rules. I'm not breaking anything." That was the moment I realized she didn't care about rules. She cared about control. Her eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that." I shrugged. "We will." That night I saw her pacing in her driveway, talking on the phone. I didn't think much of it, until the flashing lights appeared the next morning. The officer had just arrived when I stepped outside. Karen was already mid-rant, waving the HOA rule book like it was a holy text. "Sir," the officer said politely, "are you aware of the complaint against you?" I nodded. "I've been informed." He sighed. She claims your mailbox is non-compliant. Mind if I take a look? Go ahead. He crouched down, measured the height, and compared it to county standards on his phone. Then he stood, scratching his chin. Looks fine to me. In fact, he glanced at Karen's across the street. That one's the problem. Karen's jaw dropped. Excuse me? He walked across the road, measuring tape in hand. Her post was several inches taller than allowed, and her decorative metal box jutted too close to the sidewalk, technically a safety violation. He looked back at her. Ma'am, yours violates local code. You might get a notice from the county. The color drained from her face. She stuttered, but, I'm the HOA president. He shrugged. Doesn't change the rules, ma'am. The neighbors started whispering. Some even chuckled quietly. I stood there, hiding a grin behind my coffee cup. That moment was the first crack in her perfect rule queen armor. But I didn't know then. This was just the start of something much bigger. Because when Karen gets embarrassed, she doesn't back down. She doubles down. And what she did next? Well, let's just say she made things way worse for herself. Where are you watching from? Comment your country or city. I'd love to know how far this story travels. When the officer drove off that morning, leaving Karen red-faced and speechless, I thought that was the end of it. I even joked with my neighbor, Mr. Allen, that maybe she'd finally learn to mind her own business. I was wrong. Karen didn't go quiet. She went strategic. The next few days were strangely calm. No angry emails, no rule pamphlets taped to my door, no passive-aggressive lawn signs, just peace. For a brief moment, I actually thought she had moved on. Then, one morning, I walked out to check my mail and found something odd. A bright yellow tag was hanging on my mailbox with big, bold letters. Notice of violation. I froze. It wasn't from the county. It was from the HOA. The paper listed 5 supposed violations. Unauthorized mailbox design, improper paint color, unapproved installation, non-standard post height, disrupting neighborhood harmony. That last one made me laugh out loud. But the bottom line wasn't funny. It said I owed a $250 fine. I stared at it in disbelief. Karen must have called an emergency HOA meeting and somehow pushed this through. It wasn't even legal without a vote, but that didn't stop her. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I walked straight to her house. She was watering her flowers when I arrived. Morning, Karen, I said. Got your little note? She smiled like a cat that had just cornered a mouse. Oh, good. I was wondering when you'd see it. Let me guess, I said. You made up those violations yourself? Her smile didn't fade. The board approved it. You'll find we take community standards very seriously. I crossed my arms. Karen, you are the board. Everyone else quit because of you. Her eyes flickered with irritation, but she quickly recovered. Regardless, you have 10 days to pay or we'll escalate. I looked her dead in the eye. Do what you need to do. And I walked away. 2 days later, I got a letter. Certified mail this time. It was from the HOA's legal department. Except when I opened it, I realized it was written by Karen herself. I could tell from the font. She always used this overly fancy script that looked like it belonged on wedding invitations. The letter said, Dear homeowner, you are hereby notified that your mailbox remains in violation of HOA policy. Failure to comply will result in legal action and potential property lien. Sincerely, HOA Compliance Division, CC President Karen Sanders. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the letter. But then, something clicked in my mind. If she was pretending to send legal notices, she might actually go further, and that could affect my property record. I couldn't risk that. So I decided to fight back, but not with anger. I wanted to handle it smartly. The next morning I drove to the county clerk's office. I brought photos of my mailbox, the HOA's fake notice, and even the officer's earlier report. The clerk, a friendly older man named Dave, listened carefully. When I showed him the letter, he raised his eyebrows. This isn't legal. She's impersonating a county compliance officer by using this language. I grinned. That's what I thought. Dave shook his head. Leave this with me. I'll forward it to the county inspector and the HOA registry department. Sounds like your HOA president needs a reminder about the limits of her authority. I thanked him and left. By the time I got home, the neighborhood group chat was buzzing. Someone had posted about Karen's mailbox crusade. Apparently, I wasn't the only one she'd targeted. She had fined another family for having a blue recycling bin visible from the street, another for wind chimes that disrupt harmony. Everyone was fed up. For the first time since I moved in, my neighbors started talking, not out of fear of her, but in frustration because of her. That's when I realized something. I wasn't alone anymore. We decided to hold a private neighborhood meeting, without Karen. We met in Alan's garage, about 12 of us. People brought coffee and cookies, but the air was tense. Everyone had a story. One woman said Karen threatened to report her kids for playing basketball in the driveway. Another said Karen accused her of damaging property values by having garden gnomes. When I shared my story, the room went silent. Then someone said, "We need to remove her." And that's when the plan began. We decided to vote for a new board officially. I volunteered to handle the paperwork with the county since I already had connections there now. But just as we were finalizing the plan, Karen walked in. No knock, no warning, just the garage door creaking open and her standing there with her arms crossed. "Well, well, well," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Secret meetings now? How very neighborly of you." No one spoke. Her eyes locked on me. "You think you can turn the neighborhood against me, mailbox man?" "Karen," I said calmly, "you turned them against yourself." Her face twisted. "We'll see about that. You'll regret crossing me." Then she slammed the garage door behind her and stormed off. The next morning, a county vehicle pulled up to her house. Karen stood outside arguing with the inspector. I watched from my porch, trying not to smile. The inspector pointed at her mailbox. Karen gestured wildly, waving papers. But soon, he shook his head and began writing something down. 5 minutes later, he stuck a bright orange tag on her mailbox. Violation notice. County fine. The same thing she had tried to do to me. And this time, everyone saw it happen. Neighbors peeked from their windows. Some even took pictures. Karen ripped the notice off, crumpled it, and threw it on the ground. But it was too late. The damage was done. The Queen had been dethroned in public view. And that was the moment things truly exploded, because humiliation wasn't something Karen could handle quietly. If I thought her revenge had ended with the fake letter, I was wrong. She was just getting started. After the county inspector left that day, the air around the neighborhood changed. Everyone had seen it. The mighty HOA queen finally being fined for the same nonsense she accused others of. You could almost feel the tension crackle like lightning in the air. People whispered on sidewalks. Text chains were alive with screenshots, and even the mailman chuckled when he passed by her house. For the first time since I moved in, the street actually felt free. Kids rode bikes again. Neighbors waved without watching their lawns like prisoners. The place seemed lighter. But peace never lasts long when someone like Karen feels cornered. Because that evening, around 7 p.m., she struck back. I was on my porch again, drinking tea and watching the sunset, when I heard the sound of tape ripping. I looked across the street and there she was, wearing her floral robe, slippers, and a determined frown, taping flyers to every single mailbox she could reach. Curiosity got the best of me, so after she went inside, I walked over and peeled one off. It said in bold red letters, "Community Emergency Meeting." Fellow residents, our neighborhood is under attack by troublemakers who refuse to follow HOA rules. Certain individuals are spreading lies and trying to destroy our community's harmony. Join me in restoring order. President Karen Sanders. I sighed. Here we go again. By the next morning, those flyers were on every door, mailbox, and lamppost in the area. The neighbors weren't happy. Some were angry at her arrogance, others just tired of the drama. When the day of the meeting came, half the neighborhood gathered at the community park. Karen stood at the front with her clipboard and microphone like she was hosting a rally. A few of her loyal followers, mostly folks too scared to oppose her, stood by her side. Then there was us, the tired, fed-up crowd who just wanted peace. She started her speech with her usual fake smile. "Good evening, everyone. As you all know, some individuals have recently disrespected the community standards and caused confusion by contacting the county about our internal matters." Her eyes darted straight at me. I folded my arms and stayed silent. "Such behavior," she continued, "harms the integrity of our neighborhood. We must take a stand for order and compliance." A few people clapped weakly. But then Mr. Allen, my neighbor with the blue recycling bin violation, stepped forward. "Karen," he said, his voice firm, You fined half the neighborhood for nonsense. You even told my wife her welcome mat was too bright. We're done with this. The crowd murmured in agreement. Karen's face tightened. Excuse me, but Another woman interrupted. You threatened to report my kids to child services because they were playing soccer. Then someone else shouted, you called the cops on a mailbox. The crowd's frustration exploded all at once. People started raising their voices, waving papers, recounting every ridiculous thing she had done. Karen tried to calm them down, but it was like trying to stop a storm with an umbrella. Finally, I stepped forward. Karen, I said calmly, we're not here to destroy the community. We're here to save it from this nonsense. We all deserve respect. You don't own this neighborhood. Her cheeks flushed red. You don't understand the responsibility I carry. Someone has to enforce order. Order isn't control, I said. It's fairness. For a moment, the crowd went quiet. Then someone shouted, let's vote her out. Cheers erupted. Karen's eyes widened. You can't do that. I'm the president. Not anymore, said a soft voice behind her. It was Mrs. Patterson, the HOA's former treasurer who had quit months ago. She held up a thick binder. According to the bylaws, if a majority requests a vote of confidence, you're suspended pending review. And from the looks of it, she turned to the crowd. We have a majority. Hands went up all around. Karen stood frozen, staring at the sea of raised hands. I'll never forget her face in that moment. A mixture of disbelief and rage, like someone had just taken away her crown. But then, something strange happened. Instead of storming off or yelling, she smiled. That unsettling, too calm smile. You all think you've won, she said quietly. But you have no idea what you've started. Then she turned, gathered her flyers and walked away without another word. Everyone watched in silence. I tried to shake it off, but something about that calmness unsettled me. It wasn't the anger of someone defeated. It was the confidence of someone planning something. The next morning, I woke up to chaos. The entire neighborhood was buzzing. Literally. Trucks were parked on the street, workers in neon vests were digging near mailboxes, and a big wooden sign had been placed at the entrance that read, HOA Mailbox Replacement Program, Mandatory Compliance. I nearly spat out my coffee. Karen had found a loophole. She still technically held administrative access to the HOA's official system, and she used it to authorize a mailbox replacement project under the guise of community improvement. And the best part? She had billed everyone. Each homeowner was charged $400 for materials and installation. The neighborhood exploded. Phones rang nonstop. People shouted on driveways. Someone even threatened to call the local news. I walked over to one of the workers. Who hired you? He looked confused. The HOA president, ma'am. Karen Sanders. Of course. I called the county office immediately. They confirmed no such program had been approved. She had done it all on her own. Again. That afternoon, I gathered the neighbors and told them what I found. Everyone agreed. We needed to take this higher. Not just to the county, but to the state HOA Oversight Board. We compiled every email, every fine, every fake notice, and every incident, from the wind chime scandal to the recycling bin rebellion. And while we were doing that, Karen was across the street watching us from her porch, arms folded, smiling like she still had the upper hand. But what she didn't know was that this time, we had proof. Real, solid, undeniable proof. And when the state board got involved, that proof was going to change everything. As night fell, I sat on my porch again, looking at the new wooden sign she had posted. It was tilted slightly, its letters crooked under the porch light. The sign that started the HOA Mailbox Replacement Program. But I couldn't shake off the feeling that Karen wasn't done. She was quiet, too quiet, and whenever Karen went quiet, something big followed. For a few days after the so-called Mailbox Replacement Program began, chaos ruled the neighborhood. Every morning you could hear the rumble of trucks, the hammering of metal posts, and the muttered complaints of homeowners who had just found another unauthorized charge on their monthly HOA bill. I spent most of that week on the phone, first with the county, then with the state's HOA Oversight Board. After sending them copies of the forged letters and the invoices, they promised to review the matter urgently. That was official language for don't expect anything soon, but at least it was a start. Meanwhile, Karen strutted around the street as if nothing had happened. She wore her usual floral blouse and sun hat, waving at people she'd just fined the day before. "Just keeping our community beautiful," she'd chirp, pretending the neighborhood wasn't boiling with anger behind every curtain. Then one morning, 2 black SUVs pulled into the subdivision. The doors opened and 3 people stepped out. 2 men in suits and 1 woman with a clipboard. They walked straight toward Karen's house. The gossip wheel turned instantly. Windows lifted, doors cracked open, and half the neighborhood peeked out like it was a movie. Within minutes, Karen was on her porch talking to them, her hands moving fast, her voice too loud. You could tell she was panicking even from across the street. After about 20 minutes, one of the officials walked toward me. "Mr. Johnson?" he asked. "That's me," I said. "I'm with the state HOA review board," he said, showing me a badge. "We received your complaint. Mind if we take a look at your mailbox and the paperwork she sent you?" I handed him the stack of letters, including the ridiculous notice of violation and the fake legal warning. He read silently for a few moments, his eyebrows lifting higher with every page. "This," he said finally, "is not just a violation of HOA ethics. It's fraud." I blinked. "Fraud?" He nodded. "Impersonating an official agency, billing unauthorized fees, and falsifying HOA records. All serious offenses. We've already verified with the county that she didn't file the necessary permits for any replacement project." Across the street, Karen stood watching us, her arms crossed. When our eyes met, she turned quickly and went inside. The officials inspected a few more houses, took photos of the mailboxes, and spoke to other residents. They were polite but firm. Every time they knocked on a door, another neighbor handed them a story, another piece of proof. By evening, the investigation had spread through the whole block. It was surreal watching it unfold. The woman who had once acted like a sheriff of suburban perfection was now the subject of an actual legal inquiry. But strangely, I didn't feel happy. I felt tired. Because as much as Karen drove everyone crazy, seeing her unravel like that made me realize how deep her obsession ran. She wasn't just a busybody, she needed control to feel important. Without it, she was lost. Still, I wasn't about to let her keep hurting people. That night, the oversight board asked me to attend a formal review meeting scheduled for Friday at the town hall. They also invited other residents who had been affected. When word got around, the neighborhood buzzed with energy. People who hadn't spoken to each other in months were suddenly planning carpools. Even Mr. Allen joked, "Maybe we'll all get matching t-shirts. Free the mailboxes." I laughed for the first time in weeks. Friday came. The town hall was small but packed. Karen sat at the front table, her lawyer beside her, both looking stiff. Across from them sat the 3 investigators, stacks of documents laid out neatly. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up and explained everything, from the day she complained about the color of my mailbox to the fake notices and the county fine she'd received for her own. I showed photos, emails, and recordings of her official announcements. The board members took notes quietly, nodding now and then. When I finished, Karen's lawyer stood up. My client was only enforcing community rules. Any inconsistencies are simple administrative mistakes. One of the board members raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Sanders, did you or did you not issue these violation notices without a formal vote?" Karen hesitated. "I took initiative." "And did you charge homeowners $400 each for a replacement program that was never approved?" She swallowed. "I intended to improve the neighborhood." "That's not the question, Ms. Sanders." Silence filled the room. Finally, the board chair spoke. "We've seen enough. This is a clear abuse of authority. Effective immediately, you are suspended from your position as HOA president pending further investigation. You are prohibited from issuing any communications or financial notices under the HOA name." A murmur ran through the crowd. Karen's face went pale. "You can't do this to me," she shouted, standing abruptly. "I built this neighborhood. Without me, it'll fall apart." The chair didn't even look up. Meeting adjourned. That was it. For the first time since I moved in, the neighborhood exhaled. People clapped quietly. A few even hugged. Outside, the evening air felt cooler, lighter. But as we all walked back to our cars, I noticed Karen standing alone by the fountain, staring down at her reflection. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't over. She wasn't the type to accept defeat quietly. And I was right. Because the very next morning, when I stepped outside to get my mail, there it was. Something that made my stomach drop. My mailbox door was hanging open, the hinge bent, letters scattered on the ground. Someone had pried it open during the night. At first, I thought it was vandalism. But when I picked up the mail, I saw it. A folded piece of pink paper tucked inside. In big black handwriting, it read, "You think you've won? Watch your back." When I saw that pink note tucked among my scattered letters, my heart froze. For a moment I just stood there on the porch, the early morning air cold against my skin. The message was written in thick black marker, bold, messy, and furious. "You think you've won? Watch your back." I read it 3 times, hoping I'd misread it. But it was real. Someone had broken into my mailbox in the middle of the night. I glanced up and down the street. The neighborhood was quiet. Too quiet. The same street that once echoed with kids' laughter and barking dogs now felt like a ghost town. Curtains fluttered. Blinds shifted. People were watching, pretending not to. I knew who had done it. Or at least, I thought I did. Karen. But as much as I wanted to believe it was her, I needed proof. I picked up the mail, straightened the bent door, and went inside. My hands were shaking as I laid the note on the kitchen counter. I stared at it while my coffee brewed, trying to think. If she was bold enough to vandalize my property, what would she do next? Later that morning, I decided to check my security camera footage. A small camera faced the front yard and mailbox. It wasn't fancy, but it worked. I rewound the recording to midnight. At first, I saw nothing but shadows and streetlights. Then, around 1:43 a.m., a figure appeared. A woman. She was wearing a hoodie, but I recognized that walk anywhere. Arms crossed tight, head bobbing forward with purpose. Karen. She stopped at my mailbox, looked around, and yanked the door open. She shoved something inside, then quickly walked off into the dark. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. There it was. Proof. I exported the footage, saved it on a flash drive, and sat back for a long minute. Then I sighed. Because deep down, I knew what I had to do next. By noon, I was standing at the sheriff's office. The same one where weeks ago Karen had called the police over my illegal mailbox. Only this time I was the one filing the report. The deputy on duty, Officer Collins, recognized me instantly. "Mailbox guy," he said with a grin. "You again?" I handed him the flash drive and the pink note. "Yeah," I said quietly. "She broke into it this time." He stopped smiling. "Who?" "Karen Sanders." He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "She's really making a name for herself, huh?" He plugged the drive into the computer and watched the footage carefully. The room went silent except for the soft hum of the monitor. When the clip ended, he exhaled. "That's her, all right. I'll file this as vandalism and harassment. We'll pay her a visit." "Thank you," I said. He gave a small nod. "You're doing the right thing, but I'll be honest, people like her don't stop easily." I already knew that. When I got home that evening, the street was buzzing with whispers again. Mrs. Patterson from down the block hurried over. "Did you hear?" she asked, lowering her voice. "Karen was screaming at the officers who came to her door, said you were framing her, called them corrupt, and said the neighborhood was turning into a war zone." I tried not to laugh. "That sounds about right." "She's losing it," Mrs. Patterson said softly. "You should be careful." I nodded. "I am." But inside, I was tired, exhausted even. I had moved to this neighborhood to find peace, not live in an ongoing reality show. That night I sat on my porch again, watching the wind ripple through the trees. For the first time in a while I felt sad for her. She had gone from being the self-proclaimed enforcer of order to a woman unraveling in public, grasping for control she no longer had. But then as I looked across the street, that sympathy vanished. Karen was standing on her porch staring straight at me. No words, no movement, just that cold, hard glare. It lasted maybe 30 seconds, but it felt like forever. Then she turned, went inside, and slammed the door. The next day I woke up to more trouble. Half the neighborhood's mailboxes, including mine again, had been spray-painted. Some with red paint, some black, all marked with angry words. "Rule breaker, Cheater. Liar. People gathered in the street, furious. Mr. Allen's wife shouted, "She's lost her mind. She's vandalizing everything now." Another neighbor said, "We need security patrols." Before long, a county patrol car showed up again. Officer Collins stepped out shaking his head. "She didn't even wait 24 hours, he muttered. He took pictures, collected statements, and promised to send a formal notice for property damage. I asked, "Can they arrest her?" "Not yet," he said. "But we're building a case." Karen watched all of it from her window, the curtains barely cracked. She knew what she'd done, but she didn't care anymore. Something inside her had snapped. By that evening, things got worse. Someone posted about the vandalism on the neighborhood's Facebook group. The post exploded. Over 100 comments in an hour. People shared photos, videos, even the police report. And then a new account appeared, one with no profile picture named HOA Justice Queen. The account started posting wild accusations, claiming I had forged the video, that I was conspiring with the board to destroy her. I didn't engage, but others did. The thread turned into a digital battlefield, neighbors arguing, taking sides, digging up old grudges, and just like that, the neighborhood split in two. Team Karen versus Team Sanity. 3 days later, the state HOA board called again. They'd completed their investigation. Karen had been officially removed as president, permanently. When the announcement hit the group chat, there was a flood of cheers and celebratory gifts. Someone even made a meme of Karen's mailbox with the caption, "When karma delivers faster than USPS." But the victory didn't feel as sweet as I expected, because as night fell, I looked out my window again and saw her car gone. Her house dark. Karen had disappeared. No one saw her leave. No moving trucks. No goodbye. Just gone. At least that's what we thought. Until a week later, when letters started arriving again. Mysterious letters. Each one stamped with no return address, typed in the same flowery font Karen always used. And every single one said the same thing. "You can remove me from the board. You can take away my title. But you'll never silence the HOA." For a few days, everything was still. No shouting, no flyers, no cops. It almost felt like peace had finally come back to our neighborhood. Birds chirped again, kids rode their bikes, and the only sound at night was the hum of crickets instead of Karen's angry voice echoing down the street. But peace never lasts long when someone like Karen disappears. It started with the letters. At first, people thought they were jokes. Neighbors posted pictures of them on our community group chat, laughing it off. "You can remove me from the board, you can take away my title, but you'll never silence the HOA." The letters looked official, printed on glossy paper, typed in the same elegant font Karen always used. Some had her signature at the bottom, others were stamped with a fake HOA seal. But the strangest part was that they were postmarked locally. That meant whoever sent them hadn't gone far. I got mine on a Wednesday afternoon. It was folded neatly inside a plain white envelope, slid halfway into my mailbox as if the mailman didn't even notice it. When I opened it, I expected another threat or accusation. But this one was different. "You stole my power. You humiliated me. But soon, you'll see. The rules will return. The order will rise. I built this place, and I can rebuild it my way." I reread the note twice, then slowly looked up. Across the street, her house was dark. Curtains drawn. No car in the driveway. But something about that silence didn't feel right. I could feel her presence again, even if I couldn't see her. That night, I was sitting in the living room when I heard it. 3 soft knocks at the door. Not loud, not urgent, just slow, measured. I hesitated for a moment, then stood up. Through the window, I could barely make out a figure standing on the porch, but when I opened the door, no one was there. Just another envelope. This one wasn't typed. It was handwritten and the ink was smudged, like whoever wrote it did so in a hurry. "Stop fighting the rules. You don't understand what you've started." My stomach turned. I looked around the street again. Porch lights glowed faintly in the distance, but everything was still. Too still. That night, I didn't sleep. The next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing again, but this time with fear. Almost every house had received one of those letters overnight. Some were left in mailboxes, others taped to doors or stuck under doormats. The messages were all slightly different, but the tone was the same. Warnings. Promises. Threats. Mr. Allen came running up to my porch with his letter in hand. "This is crazy, man. Who's doing this?" "Who do you think?" I said. "But she's gone," he argued. "The HOA board said she moved out." I shook my head. "Or maybe she just wants us to think she did." Mrs. Patterson joined us, clutching her own envelope. "The police need to do something. These messages are scaring people." "They will," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. That evening, the sheriff's deputy, Officer Collins, returned. He collected several of the letters and promised to check the postmarks. "They're all from this area," he confirmed, "but the handwriting's inconsistent. Could be her trying to disguise it, or someone helping her." "Helping her?" I asked. He nodded. "She had followers on that HOA board, didn't she? Maybe one of them's doing her dirty work." That thought made my skin crawl. If Karen had someone working with her, we weren't just dealing with one obsessed ex-president anymore. We were dealing with something bigger, a small network of rule enforcers trying to bring her back. The next week was pure tension. People started locking their mailboxes. Some even installed new ones with built-in cameras. Others began putting up no trespassing signs and motion lights. But then came the real shocker. One morning around 6:30, I stepped outside to grab the newspaper and froze. Every mailbox on the street was painted the same color. Gray. Perfect. Uniform. HOA approved gray. Every single one. Even the ones that had been replaced after the vandalism. Even mine. Someone had gone through the entire neighborhood overnight, repainting all the mailboxes to look exactly like the old HOA standard. And taped to mine was another note. "Now it looks the way it should. You're welcome." I felt my blood run cold. How had no one heard anything? The sound of spray paint, footsteps, cars, nothing. It was like it happened in the dead of night, perfectly planned, perfectly executed. Later that morning, as the neighbors gathered in the street, people argued over what to do. "She's gone too far," one shouted. "Call the police again," another yelled. "This isn't funny anymore," someone else cried. Even the calmest residents looked shaken. Officer Collins came again, examined the mailboxes, and frowned. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. This was fast, quiet, and done by someone who knows the layout here. "She's back," Mrs. Patterson whispered. "I told you she's back." But when the police checked Karen's old house again, it was still empty. Dusty, untouched. Only one thing had changed. The mailbox in front of her house, the one that the county fined her for, was also freshly painted gray, and stuck to its post was a single white rose. That night I sat on the porch again, unable to shake the feeling that she was nearby. Maybe hiding, maybe watching. I looked up at the stars, and for a brief moment I thought about everything that had happened. The fights, the fines, the endless war over mailboxes. It all seemed ridiculous. But under that ridiculousness was something darker. Something real. Karen wasn't fighting for rules. She was fighting for control. And losing it had broken something inside her. But if she was willing to sneak around in the middle of the night, painting mailboxes and sending threats, how far would she go next? I didn't have to wonder for long. Because the very next morning a new sign appeared at the entrance of the neighborhood. Large, freshly painted, and nailed into the ground. It read, "HOA Reinstatement Committee, meeting tonight at 8 p.m., hosted by Acting President, KS. That morning, everyone in the neighborhood stood frozen in front of the sign. The letters were big and neat, painted in shiny black strokes. HOA Reinstatement Committee, meeting tonight at 8 p.m., hosted by Acting President, KS. The KS was what sent chills down my spine. Everyone knew who that was. Karen Sanders, the same woman who had been stripped of her title, fined, and supposedly vanished. "She's lost her mind," Mrs. Patterson whispered, clutching her morning paper. "She can't just call herself acting president. That's not how it works." "Tell that to her," I said quietly. Mr. Allen shook his head. "If she's back, I'm not going anywhere near that meeting." But some of the neighbors looked uncertain. Fear and curiosity battled in their eyes. The sign stood at the entrance like a dare, daring anyone who doubted her to show up. That entire day, the neighborhood buzzed with gossip. Some said Karen was hiding nearby. Others swore they'd seen a woman matching her build walking down Maple Drive late at night. By evening, the tension was thick enough to touch. At 7:45, I stepped outside. The air was cool, the sun sinking behind the trees, painting the sky orange and gold. I wasn't planning to attend the meeting, but something about it bothered me. What if she was planning something dangerous? I couldn't ignore it. So I decided to go. When I reached the park, about 15 people were already gathered. Some carried flashlights, others their phones recording just in case. No one was talking. Everyone was just waiting. At 8:03, footsteps echoed from the shadows near the gazebo. A figure appeared. At first I thought it was her, Karen, but as the person stepped into the light I realized it wasn't. It was a man. Tall, wearing a dark jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. He carried a folder and looked around before speaking. "Good evening," he said calmly. "I'm here on behalf of the HOA Reinstatement Committee." Murmurs rippled through the group. Someone shouted, "There is no HOA anymore." The man nodded slowly. "That's exactly why we're here. To fix that. The neighborhood has fallen into chaos since the leadership change. We're restoring structure, order, and community pride." His voice was measured, almost rehearsed. I stepped forward. "Who sent you?" He looked at me, expression blank. "I think you already know." The crowd gasped. "Karen?" I said. He didn't answer, just smiled faintly. He opened the folder and began pulling out forms. "If you sign this petition, we can reinstate the HOA under temporary management. We'll elect new officers next month. This is your chance to make things right again." He handed the papers to the nearest person, a nervous-looking woman who hesitated, then passed them along instead of signing. The papers reached me. I took one, scanned it, and felt my stomach tighten. At the bottom, in small print, it read, "By signing, you authorize Kay Sanders to act as interim president until elections are complete." I looked up sharply. "This is a trap." The man's smile didn't fade. "No one's forcing anyone, but if we don't have structure, this neighborhood will fall apart." "That's not your decision," I said firmly. "Karen's gone. She lost that right." He tilted his head. "Gone? Who said she was gone?" A shiver ran through me. Behind us, footsteps echoed again. Everyone turned toward the sound, and there she was, Karen Sanders, wearing her signature blue blazer, her hair pulled back tight, a clipboard clutched in one hand. She looked thinner, paler, but her eyes burned with the same fierce determination. The crowd went silent. "Good evening, neighbors," she said, her voice smooth and steady. "I see you got my invitation." No one spoke. She continued, "I understand there's been confusion about recent events, but I'm here to bring back what made this community great: order, beauty, and pride." Someone muttered, "And fines." Karen ignored it. "I know some of you have doubts about me, but let's be honest, without leadership, things have fallen apart. Look at these mailboxes, uneven, mismatched, disgraceful. This is not what we built." Her words carried that same strange conviction, the kind that could almost make you doubt your own memory of events. Mr. Allen shouted, "You painted those mailboxes yourself, Karen?" Her eyes flicked toward him. "Rumors. Lies spread by those who don't value community." She took a slow step forward. "Now I'm offering you all a choice. Sign this petition and let me lead again, or watch this neighborhood crumble." The air felt heavy. No one dared move. Finally, I spoke. "Karen, you can't lead something that doesn't want to follow. You were removed by the people standing right here." She smiled faintly. "People can change their minds." The man beside her nodded, collecting the forms. "You've all seen what happens when there are no rules: noise, clutter, disobedience. We're here to restore harmony." But then, before anyone could respond, bright headlights flashed across the park. 2 county sheriff cars rolled up. Officer Collins stepped out, his face unreadable. "Evening, folks," he said, walking toward the gazebo. "Got a report of an unauthorized assembly." Karen's smile faltered. "This is a community meeting, officer. We have every right to—" He cut her off. "You don't have the right to impersonate an HOA president after being officially removed by the state board." The man beside her tensed. "Ma'am," Collins said, "you've already received a cease and desist order. You're in violation of that order by organizing this meeting." The air went still. Karen's voice dropped. "You don't understand, officer. They need me. Without me, this place That's enough, Colin said firmly. You're coming with us. He motioned to another deputy, who gently took her by the arm. Karen didn't resist at first. She just looked around at all of us, her once loyal neighbors standing silent. Her eyes met mine for a second. And in that second, I saw something I didn't expect. Not rage, not arrogance, desperation. Don't let them destroy what we built, she whispered. You'll see. Then they led her away. The man who had come with her slipped quietly into the darkness before anyone could stop him. After she was gone, everyone stood there in stunned silence. Mrs. Patterson wiped her eyes. I can't believe it's finally over. But I wasn't so sure. Because as I looked down at the papers the man had left behind, one of them caught my eye. A small, handwritten note at the bottom corner. It said, "If she falls, another will rise." For a few days after Karen's arrest, it felt like the neighborhood could finally breathe again. The park was quiet. The mailbox paint smell had faded. Kids played soccer on the street again. Even the air seemed lighter, like the whole place had finally let out a sigh of relief. But deep down I knew better. Because every time something like this happened, every time Karen got caught or cornered, it always came with a twist. And this time, the twist came quietly, tucked into the folds of daily life, like a whisper hiding in plain sight. It started with the emails. The first one arrived 3 days after the meeting incident. The subject line read, "Community update from the new HOA Leadership Committee." I almost laughed out loud when I saw it. I thought it was a joke. But when I opened it, my stomach dropped. Dear residents, we are pleased to announce the reformation of the HOA under temporary leadership. This committee will act on behalf of the community until new elections are held. Thank you for your patience and cooperation as we continue to restore order to our neighborhood. Acting Secretary, J. Morris, for the Interim Committee of Homeowners Order Advancement. Homeowners Order Advancement, HOA. They'd rebuilt the acronym. I read it twice, then checked the sender's address. It wasn't from Karen's old account, it was new. But the tone, the structure, even the overuse of order and compliance, it was pure Karen. It was like her ghost was still writing from behind the screen. By the afternoon, everyone was talking about it. The neighborhood group chat exploded. Is this real? Someone asked. Who's on this new committee? Another replied. I thought the HOA was disbanded. No one had answers. Then, around 5 p.m., another message arrived. This time, it wasn't digital, it was physical. Every mailbox had a neatly folded flyer inside, cream-colored paper, elegant font, and a familiar seal stamped at the top. The same one Karen used to stamp her memos. Notice. Effective immediately, all residents are required to maintain mailbox uniformity standards per community guidelines. Inspections will begin next week. Non-compliance may result in written notice or fine. At the bottom, signed, Interim Committee of HOA, Homeowners Order Advancement. Mr. Allen came running up my driveway waving his copy. She's doing it again. I frowned. She's in custody. She can't be. Then who's doing it? He demanded. Her ghost? That night a few neighbors gathered at my house. Mrs. Patterson brought coffee, and we spread all the papers and letters on the table like detectives solving a case. She pointed at the signature line. Look at the handwriting. This J. Morris. That's not new. I've seen that name before. I leaned forward. Where? In one of Karen's meeting minutes from months ago. He was the old treasurer, the one who suddenly quit after the recycling bin fines. Mr. Allen slammed his fist lightly on the table. So he's behind this? He's trying to bring her back? Or he's doing her dirty work? Mrs. Patterson whispered. The room went silent. We knew Karen had loyal followers, neighbors who secretly agreed with her obsession for rules and control, people who believed she kept the community clean. Maybe one of them saw her downfall as an opportunity. The next morning, I woke up to another surprise. My mailbox, yes, again, was open. But this time nothing was stolen or broken. Instead, a new sign had been taped to the side. It read, Property of HOA, do not tamper. I tore it off immediately, my hands shaking. The idea that someone was claiming ownership over my property again felt unreal. But when I looked down the street, I realized I wasn't alone. Every single mailbox had the same label. Even Karen's old house. That one hit me hardest. Because Karen's home was still empty. No car, no lights, no movement. Yet someone had gone there too. Whoever this committee was, they were organized. Fast, quiet, just like her. By the weekend, things got worse. A new website appeared online, www.neighborhoodorder.net. It looked official. Sleek logo, community rules, contact forms. The homepage read, "Join us as we restore the values that made this neighborhood great. Together, we bring back discipline, structure, and pride." There were tabs for complaint forms, inspection schedules, and even a report neighbor option. It was like Karen's digital version of the HOA had been resurrected. And then, I noticed the footer of the site. Maintained by KS Consulting. Karen Sanders. She was behind it, somehow. Maybe not physically here, but pulling strings from wherever she was. That evening I received another email. This time, it was personal. "You think you stopped me, but you can't stop order. You can't stop what people crave. Control. Some of them still believe. Some of them still listen. You should too. Before it's too late." No signature. Just 3 letters. KS. I stared at the screen for a long time, heart thumping. She wasn't just haunting the neighborhood. She was manipulating it from afar, building a shadow network of rule enforcers to continue her mission. And the worst part? It was working. Some of the quieter neighbors had started complying again, painting their mailboxes, trimming their lawns, even replacing their house numbers to fit standards. Fear had crept back in. Karen didn't need to live here anymore. She had built something stronger, something invisible, a ghost HOA. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that website, those flyers, those quiet footsteps that seemed to move through our street even when no one was there. So I got in my car and drove toward Karen's old house. It was dark, silent, lifeless, but as I stepped closer I noticed something strange. The porch light, one that had been off for weeks, was faintly glowing. And on her front door, there was a new brass plate, freshly screwed in. It read, "HOA Headquarters, established 2023. The next morning, word spread like wildfire. Someone had seen lights flickering inside Karen's old house the night before. Others swore they'd seen shadows moving through the windows. By sunrise, half the neighborhood was outside, whispering, watching, and waiting. Her porch light, the same one that had stayed off for weeks, was now on again, glowing faintly against the peeling paint of her front door. And that new brass plate? It gleamed in the sunlight. HOA Headquarters, established 2023. It was like a ghost had moved back in. I stood there for a long moment, just staring at it. The morning breeze was soft, but the air felt heavy, like the street itself was holding its breath. Finally, Mr. Allen walked up beside me. "Tell me you're seeing this too," he said quietly. "I'm seeing it," I replied, "and I don't like what it means." Mrs. Patterson joined us, clutching her phone. "I called the county office. They said the house is still legally vacant. Nobody's supposed to be living here." "Well," I said, nodding toward the faint movement behind the curtain, "somebody clearly didn't get the memo." That afternoon, a few of us decided to check things out. We weren't trying to play heroes, just to see what was really going on. There were 5 of us. Me, Mr. Allen, Mrs. Patterson, and 2 younger neighbors, Josh and Tessa, who had moved in recently and wanted the nonsense to stop before it scared away homebuyers again. We met quietly by the mailbox at the end of the street and walked toward the house together. As we got closer, it became clear that someone had been there recently. The porch steps had fresh footprints, the flower pots had been moved, and faint light leaked from a window even though the blinds were mostly closed. "Hello?" Mrs. Patterson called softly. "Is anyone here?" No answer. Josh, who was recording on his phone, whispered, "This feels like one of those creepy true crime shows." I tried to smile, but the tension in my chest made it impossible. We climbed the porch steps. The boards creaked under our weight. The brass plate shimmered again in the sunlight, brand new, polished, and recently screwed in. That's when I noticed something odd about it. The screws weren't standard. They were security screws, the kind used for official signs or electrical panels. Designed so they couldn't be easily removed without a special tool. That wasn't something an average homeowner would use. That meant whoever put this up had planned to keep it there. I reached out and knocked on the door. "Karen?" I called. We know someone's in there. You can't just come back and start this again. Silence. Then, after a few seconds, a faint sound came from inside. Soft footsteps, slow and careful. Mrs. Patterson whispered, "Oh dear Lord, she's here." The doorknob turned slightly, but the door didn't open. We all froze. Then a voice came from the other side. But it wasn't Karen's. It was a man's. "Leave," the voice said quietly. "You don't belong here anymore." Mr. Allen frowned. "Excuse me? This is our neighborhood." There was a pause, then the sound of the deadbolt locking. The man spoke again. "We're restoring order. You had your chance." That was enough. We backed off the porch immediately. We called the police, but by the time they arrived, the house was dark again. The curtains were closed, the lights off. The officer shined his flashlight through the windows but saw nothing. "No one's inside," he said after circling the property. "Probably just squatters trying to scare you off." He took our statements, promised to file a report, and left. But I didn't believe it was squatters. I had heard that voice before. It was the same man who'd stood beside Karen at the park meeting, the one who brought the petitions, her right-hand man. The acting committee wasn't a rumor. It was real. And they were meeting in her old house. That night, the power went out on our street. It wasn't a normal outage, just our block. The rest of the neighborhood still had lights. I looked outside, and across the road, Karen's house was glowing faintly. One single window on the second floor was lit, and in that window, a shadow moved, slowly pacing, back and forth. Then the light turned off. The next morning, the emails started again. Mandatory HOA meeting, Saturday 7 p.m. Attendance required for all residents of our community. Failure to attend will result in formal documentation of non-compliance. Mrs. Patterson came knocking on my door, panicked. "She's holding meetings again, from inside that house." "This time it's not just her," I said. "She's got people with her." "But how?" "She might have started this mess," I said, "but she's not the one running it anymore." Because by now the tone of those emails had changed. They weren't filled with Karen's dramatic rants or emotional pleas for order. These messages were colder, more precise. They quoted HOA regulations, cited old county codes, and included detailed inspection checklists. Whoever was sending them wasn't just copying her. They were expanding on her vision. That night I parked near the end of the street with my headlights off and waited. Around midnight, 2 cars pulled up quietly in front of Karen's house. 4 people stepped out, all wearing dark jackets. They carried clipboards, flashlights, and boxes. They went inside. One of them turned back briefly, and in the glow of the porch light, I recognized him, Jay Morris, the old treasurer. So it was true. The shadow committee was real, and they were setting up operations inside that house. I pulled out my phone, took pictures from the car, and texted Mrs. Patterson. "They're meeting right now, 4 of them." She texted back almost immediately. "Then it's not just Karen's ghost anymore. It's a new HOA. And they're not stopping until they own this street again." I looked back at the house one more time. The lights flickered inside like faint lightning, and for a split second I thought I saw her, Karen, standing in the upstairs window, her face half lit, half shadowed, smiling. The following morning, the street felt different, heavier somehow. Every mailbox gleamed with a fresh coat of gray paint, the exact approved shade that Karen had demanded back when this all began. Overnight, someone had replaced the faded flags, realigned the posts, even trimmed the grass around the bases to make everything look perfect. Too perfect. I stood at the edge of my driveway, staring down the row of identical boxes. The sight made my stomach twist. What had once been a symbol of Karen's obsession was now a warning. She was back, whether in body or through the people who worshipped her rules. As I bent down to check my mail, a white envelope sat neatly inside. The paper was thick, embossed with the same HOA seal that haunted this neighborhood for months. The letter inside read, "Final notice. Dear resident, you have been identified as non-compliant with current HOA reinstatement protocols. Attendance is mandatory at tonight's neighborhood assembly at 8 p.m. Failure to attend will result in immediate review and possible property assessment. Signed, the Homeowners Order Advancement Committee, authorized by KS Consulting." At the bottom of the page was a faint watermark, A small, barely visible signature. K. Sanders. By 7:45 that night, the entire neighborhood gathered outside. Nobody wanted to go inside that house again, but curiosity and fear pulled us closer. Karen's old place was glowing with light this time, every window bright. The brass plate that read HOA headquarters gleamed like a badge of victory. Mr. Allen whispered, "If she shows up again, I'm moving." "Let's just stay calm," Mrs. Patterson said. "We don't know what we're walking into." I wasn't calm. My heart thumped in my chest, my hands shaking as I held my phone ready to record. When the clock struck 8, the door creaked open. Out stepped Jay Morris, the former treasurer turned ghost committee leader, holding a clipboard and a flashlight. Behind him, 3 others followed. They were the same faces I'd seen sneaking in that night. He raised his hand. "Thank you for coming," he said with eerie politeness. "This meeting marks a new chapter for our community. One of order, accountability, and shared vision." Someone shouted from the crowd, "You have no authority here." Morris smiled faintly. "We do now. The charter has been reactivated." He held up a folder and flipped it open. "We've filed paperwork with the county to restore HOA status under new management. As of today, the state recognizes our interim committee." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "That's impossible," Mrs. Patterson shouted. "Karen was banned from ever reinstating this HOA." Morris's smile didn't fade. "Karen isn't reinstating it. We are." He turned, gesturing toward the doorway. "And now the founder of our vision will say a few words." The air went still. And then, she stepped out. Karen Sanders. Not in her usual blazer this time. She looked tired, thinner, but her eyes burned with that same determined fire. Her voice was calm when she spoke. "I know you all think I'm the villain," she began softly. "You think I wanted power, but all I ever wanted was order, safety, community. And what did you do with it?" No one answered. She took a slow step forward. "You tore it apart. You mocked the rules. You let this neighborhood fall into chaos. Look around you. Weeds, trash bins on the curb, unpainted doors, broken fences." She pointed at me. "You led this rebellion, didn't you? You thought freedom meant ignoring standards." I clenched my fists, but kept quiet. She smiled faintly. "The irony is I was right all along. You need structure. Even now you came because I called. You still follow." The crowd murmured, angry but uncertain. Karen looked at Morris and nodded. He handed her a single envelope. She opened it, pulled out a paper, and read aloud. "Effective immediately, the Homeowners Order Advancement Committee is reinstated as the governing body of this neighborhood. All residents are subject to review and reevaluation. Non-compliance will result in property reassessment and disciplinary measures." Then she looked up, her smile widening. "And the first property we'll be reviewing," her gaze locked on me, "is his." The crowd erupted. People shouted, some angry, some frightened. Flashlights flickered. Someone yelled, "This is illegal." I took a step forward. "Karen, stop this madness. You've already lost everything. Don't drag everyone else down with you." But she didn't flinch. "I haven't lost anything. I've built something stronger." That's when headlights flashed again. 2 sheriff vehicles pulling into the street. Officer Collins stepped out, his hand resting on his belt. "Evening, folks," he said firmly. "We've been monitoring this situation. Miss Sanders, you're in violation of your restraining order. You're not supposed to be within 500 feet of this neighborhood." Karen froze. "You don't understand." He cut her off. "I do. We've seen the letters, the website, the committee filings. It's over, Karen." The officers approached, handcuffing Morris first as he muttered something under his breath about unfinished work. Karen tried to resist, but her strength gave out. As they led her toward the car, she turned to me one last time. "You can take away the name," she said quietly, "but the rules will remain. Someone will always enforce them." Her words hung in the air long after the sirens faded. 2 weeks later, the brass plate disappeared from her door. The website went offline. The email stopped. The county declared the old HOA officially dissolved, this time for good. Life slowly returned to normal. Mailboxes stayed gray, but no one cared anymore. Kids played, dogs barked, and for the first time, people actually talked to one another without fear of fines or flyers. Still, every now and then, I catch myself glancing across the street at Karen's house. The porch light remains off, but sometimes, just sometimes, I swear I see a faint shadow in the window watching. Maybe it's just my imagination. Or maybe, like she said, rules never really die. They just wait for someone new to enforce them. Where are you watching from? Comment your city or country. It's been amazing sharing this story with people all around the world.